If it feels like your mind keeps going back to the old story, no matter how much you're affirming, that doesn't mean that you're failing. Your subconscious mind is literally doing exactly what it's designed for, which is repeating a pattern, sticking to familiarity. Once you understand all of this and everything I'm going over in today's video, you can break that old cycle so much faster. Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. We are delving into the subconscious mind, the old story, the cycle of going back to those thoughts, continuing to repeat that, and how to actually break that loop. So welcome to any new viewers. My name is Alexa. I'm a manifestation coach. And yeah, today, as I said, we're delving into the subconscious mind. It's not so much in the quantum physics realm of things that I often touch on in my videos lately. This is kind of more just the facts, the basic information, and the type of approach that you really need to remember and hold on to as you're manifesting. If you do struggle with this, if things have been really up and down. So I've got lots of different points of advice for you guys today. So stay tuned. And as always, right before I start, on screen for a few seconds, I will pop all my information. So pause the video, read through it quickly if you would like to see the extra coaching and bonus materials that I offer. If you want to actually be in control of what videos you see, so you're literally seeing the type of content that you exactly want, you can become a member for $8.99 a month. Really inexpensive. I still have the Q&A coming up at the end of the month, and members are still technically voting as this video goes up on the challenge for this month. So yeah, take a look. The join button is right below, and now let's start the video. Your brain will literally prioritize familiarity, patterns, whatever the assumptions, beliefs, and just literal thought patterns and, the way you go about your life, the habits, the automated thoughts and responses. Your brain will literally adopt that and focus on that and prioritize that way above any desire you have for your manifestation, desire for the outcome for your specific person, above what the objective fact even is, whatever the objective reality is. If your mind has held on to a certain pattern that you believe and you assume, and that's, become your repeated pattern overall, literally. So negative automated reactions, panic, jumping to worst case scenario, assuming certain things turn out a certain way in your life. That's where your mind will go to and hold on to and be comfortable in. And repetition is literally going to create not just the thoughts and thought patterns, but your literal self-concept, the identity that you have, the version of yourself that you are, and however that evolves, whether it's positive or negative. Now with you guys all knowing manifestation and law of assumption, I'm hoping that is only, positive developments and resolving and unraveling all those negative habits and patterns that you may have had up until now. But the repetition is literally shaping that. So it's not just the way you think or the thoughts that pop up in your mind. It's literally how you view yourself, who you are, the version of you that you are, the identity that you have because of the repetition that has built up in your mind. So because of those repetitive patterns and the emotional responses that are elicited, the emotions tied to that, the old story feels safe and familiar and, free from rejection. It saves you from the unknown and rejection because you can build up so many endless assumptions and, reactions and thoughts and analytical judgments based on your circumstances and your 3D reality, just because it feels safe. Because you say, well, SP always says this and does that. Oh, SP did this again, therefore I already know what the reason for that is. I know the outcome of that. It's a way of keeping you safe, preventing rejection and familiarity, safety. Everyone and, every living being and way of thinking and brain function is about keeping you safe and protected and away from the unknown, right? So that's what the, repetition does, and what holding on to the repetition in the brain does. It's staying safe with that familiarity of the old story, the patterns that you've had up until now, which is why, unfortunately, you can't just tell your mind, which subconsciously doesn't understand logic, oh, I'm just going to stop doing this because it's bringing negativity. It's actually harming me. It's harming me emotionally. It's not helping me achieve my goals. The mind isn't going to suddenly say, oh yeah, that's not for our highest good. Let's release all those patterns that we've built up and just start with something brand new. It unfortunately doesn't work that way, which is why that consistency, it does take a lot of effort. So then when you reach a point of feeling stressed or having this state of needing reassurance, a state of urgency, a time crunch manifestation, all those kind of things that can trigger that reaction, and then that literally being your reaction after in terms of stress, feeling urgency, feeling really stressed and on edge essentially. That's literally going to push your mind back into those patterns even more, because it's going to revert back to what it knows. And in order for it to know the new story, the new positive patterns, which I'll delve into a little bit in this video as well, of course, it does need to build up the consistency. You need to consciously have the willpower to say, not feeling that great, but I'm still going to put in, the focus on my positive mindset. I'm not believing it, feels a bit delulu right now, but I'm still going to do it. And then what your subconscious is going to learn, almost like it's a little child, to analogize it, it's like you're raising or looking after a small child. You're with that repeated pattern, and whatever you consistently go back to and keep telling it and kind of teaching, and it's, very malleable. What is the verb for malleable? But it's very malleable, so it can be easily reshaped. You're teaching it just like a small child by constantly saying, no, here's the lesson that you need to learn, the positive, outcome to focus on. This is how it needs to be done from now on. Those old negative patterns are going to be replaced with this. At the beginning, and before you truly get into this or understand it, or like I said, if you are on a time crunch manifestation and you are in that state of feeling stressed, it's important to remember this isn't something you can just force. If you try and force the change or think, I'll just make my mind do this, or I need it to happen really, really quickly, you're going to ultimately rebound and relapse back into that old pattern, because you can't force the change. It has to be done through consistency, which, yes, it could be, a couple days. If you just kind of faltered and wavered a little bit as a reaction to something, within a couple hours you could stabilize and get back on track and feel confident in manifesting again. But sometimes the consistency really does take days or weeks, especially right at the beginning of your journey. Don't panic when the old story rears its ugly head. Don't try and argue with it or hold it on a pedestal or think this is so important and significant. I'm going to panic and get upset and let my day be ruined just because the old story came up, or I thought of something, and, kind of reverting back into that old habit. Don't think that you have to argue and, really focus on the old story. Just revise it, flip it back around, turn it into the positive. Take the opposite of that and say, no, that's where my focus is going. That's the assumption I'm taking. No matter what the circumstance was or what came up, you say, well, this is the positive outcome I choose to focus on. So you want to make sure you're replacing that negative mental reaction that you had where you got triggered or reminded of something or had a bad dream, SP said something, whatever type of reaction it may be, replace it with the repetition of the new story. It's literally just saying, okay, I'm not going to analyze or panic just because the old story came up. The only solution and outcome with manifesting, as you would know, is literally just to focus on the new version. You have to put your focus into what you want to create or what you want to continue. So a lot of the time, the old story is what has kind of persevered and been prevalent up until now. That's where you cut it off and you say, okay, well, that's not what's going to continue. That's not where my attention is going to go, because it's just going to hold it in place. And of course, my favorite method, if you're not new here, you will have heard me go on and on about this, but it really is such a simple method, and that's robotic affirming. It's really beneficial and easy because your subconscious mind is just on a loop consistently, which is the key element, just repeating the new version, the new story. Your emotions don't need to be attached to it. They will probably react in a positive way as you keep going, but it's literally just the repetition, the thought, the visual that your mind takes in attached to that thought. All of that is the most important thing. So literally saying, I have my dream life, I have my dream life, I have my dream life, robotically affirming. And then, of course, following on from that, as you start doing that, it's really important to stay consistent, even if it seems nothing's changed or conformed yet. The movement might seem slow, or remind yourself, okay, maybe up until right now, it's just been behind the scenes. I'm not really seeing it. It's not a reason to panic or, question everything. But remember, staying consistent is that key element whilst everything is kind of brewing and coming together. And tying into that, one of my favorite stories and kind of metaphors to apply to this situation as well is the parable of the mustard seed. I remember this actually. I didn't even need to kind of remind myself of it. I researched it and looked it up to make sure I've got all the correct info. I referenced this a couple videos ago as well, but I think it's such a great way to look at your manifestation as well, where you've planted the mustard seed, and then you have to have faith and watch it grow. So of course it does tie into faith religiously with God and having your prayers answered and trusting in God, but you can also apply it to as you go through life, knowing that, you know, you don't need to panic or worry just because the work and effort you've put in hasn't come into fruition yet. You've planted it. You're not going to keep digging it up. You're not going to keep checking. It's planted and it's going to grow. So what happens is mentally, that foundation that you've been building up and focusing on, instead of constantly ebbing and flowing and being really up and down, that's where your circumstances will be up and down because of your mental state. It stabilizes. It becomes more balanced, neutral, not as easily triggered and emotionally reactive. I think it probably does tie into emotional regulation as well. I think all of that is very, very likely to just be interconnected, the same way your neural pathways are impacted through, you know, manifestation techniques. So your baseline and where that foundation for your mental state is going to really balance. And what that means is that the old story is going to lose that really kind of emotional pull that you've been experiencing. Again, feeling triggered, being up and down, reactive, having a great day, and then immediately seeing something you don't like, hearing something you don't like, and it pulls you back in. The old story rears its ugly head. That's not going to happen anymore. It loses that literal emotional charge, and therefore it starts to fade away naturally. It's not important to you. It's not the be all end all. You don't take it as this objective factual thing in your 3D reality, especially when you're not even seeing that exactly play out in the same way. Your mind isn't going to say, oh, SP did this, or this happened at work. This is what has been going on in my life, and therefore this is the outcome. Your mind doesn't jump to those kind of conclusions, and it takes time to shift the way you think and react, because obviously it's not a natural way for humans to just always be, assuming best case scenario and thinking, oh yes, I'm working towards my goals and dreams. People normally don't think that way, but it's going to build up a little bit more in that aspect. So what as well happens as a great kind of after effect is you'll stop feeling this desire to keep checking the 3D reality. You will most likely stop checking for updates, movement, checking everything tied to a time crunch manifestation. Your mind and just like the way you think and carry yourself, you just feel more calm, more secure. You know, you don't need to keep checking up on your manifestation like that. When you really work on removing and kind of cutting down that resistance internally, and that resistance just kind of gets broken down on its own, you don't focus on that. The focus is to put your focus into the new story, but the effect of that, the kind of after effect and kind of, the way things unfold and develop in your mindset, the resistance gets broken down internally. So that's what speeds up movement. That's what brings in, your manifestation in a really balanced, cohesive way. Things just flow. There's not as many temporary blocks in your way. Because whatever the old story and blocks in your subconscious was, the negative assumptions and beliefs you held on to, they are obviously getting changed and broken down. So remember, your subconscious mind holds on to and continues to repeat and revert back to whatever it's trained to believe, whatever it's kind of through repetition told, well, this is what I believe. Not even consciously, obviously, you just go through life experiences, and when certain patterns repeat themselves, you just build up a belief and an assumption that that's what you experience in life and what your life looks like. But through the positive patterns, it's obviously going to start reflecting your manifestation way more. So that negative loop will break itself. The negative perpetual cycle will break itself. When you focus on the new version, you start instilling that new story into your mind and stop repeating and holding on to that old version. So stay consistent, because stability, repetition, and consistency to the best of your ability every day is what's going to speed things up and bring in the results that you want, not by trying to force things. So that is the end of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, please do thumbs up, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and I'll see you next time. Bye.